The Valaxian High Council had gathered in their crystalline chamber, their bioluminescent forms flickering with frustration. For 300 years, they had ruled the Outer Rim territories with what they considered fair and balanced governance. Their laws were reasonable. Their punishments were merciful. And yet, the smugglers continued to mock them at every opportunity. Ambassador Kriegstahl stood before the assembly, his tentacles curling with barely contained anger. He had just returned from the border systems, and the news he carried was not pleasant. The smuggling cartels had grown bold beyond measure. They moved contraband through Valaxian space as if the patrol ships were nothing more than decoration. They bribed officials, corrupted station masters, and laughed at enforcement vessels that tried to stop them. The High Council listened to his report with growing despair. They had tried everything within their power. They had increased patrol frequencies. They had offered rewards for information. They had even attempted to negotiate with the cartel leaders, hoping to reach some form of understanding. Nothing had worked. The smugglers simply moved their operations to different routes, found new ways to hide their cargo, and continued their illegal trade without interruption. "What else can we do?" asked Elder Mornvex, his ancient form dimming with exhaustion. "We have stretched our resources to their limits. Our enforcement vessels cannot be everywhere at once. The smugglers know our patrol patterns better than we do ourselves." The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. The Valaxian way was one of patience and negotiation. They did not believe in excessive force or harsh punishment. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that rational beings could be reasoned with, that understanding could bridge any gap. But the smugglers had no interest in reason. They cared only for profit. It was then that Junior Counselor Yextin spoke up. She was young by Valaxian standards, barely 2 centuries old, and her ideas were often dismissed by the elders. But desperation had made them willing to listen to anyone. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "we should consider seeking assistance from outside our borders." The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Asking for help was not something they did lightly. It implied weakness, an admission that they could not handle their own problems. But Yextin continued before they could dismiss her suggestion. "The human Imperial fleet has been expanding their patrol routes into neighboring sectors. I have heard reports of their effectiveness against similar problems in other regions. Perhaps they would be willing to assist us for the right compensation." Elder Mornvex made a sound of distaste. "The humans? They are barely 1,000 years into space travel. What could they possibly offer that we cannot provide ourselves?" "Their methods are different from ours," Yextin replied. "I have studied their enforcement protocols. They do not negotiate with criminals. They do not offer second chances. When they set out to enforce their laws, they do so without exception." The council debated for hours. Some argued that involving the humans would only complicate matters. Others worried about the political implications of admitting their failures to a younger species. But in the end, practicality won over pride. The smuggling problem had become too severe to ignore, and their own methods had proven useless. Ambassador Kriegstahl was dispatched to the nearest human outpost to make the request. He traveled with low expectations, assuming the humans would either refuse or demand impossible terms. What he found instead surprised him completely. The human commander who received him was a woman named Admiral Helena Cross. She was small by Valaxian standards, her fragile-looking body wrapped in a crisp uniform decorated with medals and insignia. Her eyes were cold and calculating, and when Kriegstahl explained the situation, she listened without interruption. "You want us to deal with your smuggler problem," she said when he finished. It was not a question. "We would appreciate any assistance you could provide," Kriegstahl replied carefully. "We understand that your fleet has other priorities, and we are prepared to offer substantial compensation for your time and resources." Admiral Cross smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Keep your compensation, Ambassador." The smuggling cartels operating in your space have been a thorn in our side as well. They use your territory as a safe haven, knowing your enforcement is lenient. We have been waiting for an invitation to address the problem. Crixtel felt a chill run through his form. Something about her tone made him uneasy. We would prefer if the operation could be conducted with minimal violence, he said. The Valaxian way values life above all else. We seek to capture the smugglers and bring them to justice, not destroy them. The Admiral's smile widened slightly. We will handle this our way, Ambassador. That was the agreement, was it not? You asked for our help, and we will provide it. I suggest you return to your council and inform them that the Imperial fleet will begin operations within the standard week. And so it began. The first sign that something had changed came 3 days later, when a smuggler convoy attempted to cross through the Velen corridor, a route they had used safely for decades. They expected to see the usual Valaxian patrol ships, easily avoided or bribed. Instead, they found themselves facing a wall of human warships. The smugglers tried to run. It was their standard response to any enforcement presence. They had faster ships, better pilots, and countless escape routes memorized. But the human vessels did not give chase. They simply opened fire. The convoy was destroyed in less than 4 minutes. No warnings were given. No demands for surrender were made. The ships simply ceased to exist, reduced to expanding clouds of debris and frozen bodies. News of the attack spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. At first, the cartels refused to believe it. Surely there had been some mistake. Surely humans had not simply executed an entire convoy without any attempt at negotiation. Such behavior was unthinkable in civilized space. But then it happened again, and again, and again. The Imperial fleet had deployed 3 carrier groups to Valaxian space, each one carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. They did not patrol in predictable patterns. They did not announce their presence. They simply appeared, seemingly at random. Anything they found conducting illegal activities was destroyed on sight. The smugglers adapted, as they always did. They changed their routes, altered their schedules, disguised their ships. For a brief time, they believed they had figured out the human patrol patterns and could resume their operations safely. They were wrong. The humans had not been patrolling at random. They had been gathering intelligence, tracking communications, identifying network nodes and supply chains. When they struck again, they did not target convoys. They targeted the infrastructure itself. Hidden bases that had operated safely for centuries were suddenly surrounded by human warships. Supply depots were vaporized. Fuel stations were destroyed. The cartel leaders watched in horror as decades of careful investment disappeared in flashes of weapons fire. Admiral Cross conducted the operation from her flagship, the ISIS Inevitable Justice. She reviewed each target personally, approved each strike with cold efficiency, and ignored every attempt at communication from the cartel leadership. They tried to surrender. They offered bribes of staggering size. They threatened retaliation. She responded to none of it. The smugglers wished to negotiate, her aide reported one morning. They are offering to cease all operations in Valaxian space in exchange for safe passage out of the region. The Admiral did not look up from her tactical display. Denied. Continue the operation. Ma'am, they are also offering to provide information on other criminal networks in the sector. Intelligence that could be valuable for future operations. I said continue the operation. We do not negotiate with criminals. We do not accept their bribes. We do not offer them deals. The law is the law, and it will be enforced without exception. The aide hesitated. With respect, Admiral, the Valaxians are becoming concerned. They did not expect this level of thoroughness. Ambassador Crixtel has requested a meeting to discuss the operations. Parameters. Admiral Cross finally looked up, her eyes hard. The Valaxians asked for our help because their methods failed. They do not get to dictate our methods now. Tell the ambassador that the operation will continue until every smuggling network in this region has been eliminated. If he has concerns, he can take them up with Imperial Command." The message was delivered. The Valaxians received it with a mixture of horror and fascination. They had never seen law enforcement conducted this way. There was no mercy, no consideration of circumstances, no attempt at rehabilitation. There was only the law and the consequences of breaking it. 6 weeks after the operation began, the smuggling cartels that had plagued Valaxian space for 3 centuries simply ceased to exist. Their ships had been destroyed. Their bases had been eliminated. Their leadership had been captured or killed. The few survivors had fled to distant regions of space, spreading stories of the human fleet that showed no mercy and accepted no excuses. The Valaxian High Council convened once more, this time to receive Admiral Cross's final report. She stood before them in her uniform, her face expressionless, her posture rigid with military precision. "The operation is complete," she said simply. "All major smuggling networks in the region have been neutralized. Trade routes are secure. Your laws will no longer be mocked." Elder Moenvex spoke first, his voice trembling slightly. "Admiral, we are grateful for your assistance. But we must admit, your methods were not what we expected. The loss of life was substantial. Many of those destroyed were not hardened criminals, but simply workers and crew members. They chose to work for criminal organizations," Admiral Cross replied. "They knew the risks. The law does not distinguish between the person giving orders and the person following them. Both are equally responsible for their crimes. But surely there could have been another way. Surely some of them could have been captured, reformed, given a chance to change their lives." The Admiral's expression did not change. "Perhaps. But our way ensures that the problem is solved permanently. Your way allowed it to fester for 300 years. Which approach do you think is more merciful in the long run?" The Council had no answer. They had spent centuries trying to solve the problem through patience and understanding, and they had failed. The humans had solved it in 6 weeks through absolute, uncompromising force. The results spoke for themselves. As Admiral Cross departed, Ambassador Crickstel accompanied her to her shuttle. He had one final question, one that had been burning in his mind since the operation began. "Admiral, how do you do it? How do you make such decisions so easily? Does it not trouble you, knowing that your orders result in so many deaths?" She paused at the shuttle door and turned to face him. For a moment, her cold expression softened, revealing something almost like weariness beneath. "It troubles me every day, Ambassador. But I do not have the luxury of letting that trouble stop me. When you enforce the law selectively, when you make exceptions based on feelings or circumstances, you create chaos. You teach people that the rules are suggestions, that they can be bent or broken if they try hard enough. We tried that once, long ago. It did not end well for us. What happened? We merely destroyed ourselves. We learned that some things cannot be negotiated, cannot be compromised. Justice must be absolute, or it means nothing. The smugglers who evaded your laws did so because they knew you would not punish them. They calculated the risks and decided they were acceptable. We simply changed that calculation." She stepped into her shuttle, but her final words drifted back to him. "Remember this, Ambassador. Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. Every smuggler you let escape carries cargo that destroys lives. Every criminal you spare will commit more crimes. We did not enjoy what we did here, but it was necessary, and it was right." The shuttle lifted off, carrying the Admiral back to her fleet. Ambassador Crickstel watched it go, his mind churning with thoughts he could not quite process. The humans were young, barely children by Valaxian standards. But they had learned lessons that older species had forgotten or never understood. In the years that followed, the Valaxian Outer Rim became the safest region in that part of the galaxy. Criminals avoided it entirely, knowing that the humans were watching, waiting, ready to enforce their laws without exception. The Valaxians struggled with what had happened, debating whether the ends justified the means. They never reached a consensus. But they never asked the humans for help again. Some lessons only needed to be learned once,